Good evening, everybody, and good to have you with us for Thursday evening. What's your story? For those of you who haven't met me, my name's Phil Smith, and I'm part of the Bells Faith community. And thanks for being with us on the Facebook feed. Sunday evenings we get together online, and a couple of times each month together again now, and based around Caloundra on the Sunshine Coast. BELLS is an acronym. It stands for Belonging, Eating, Listening, Learning and Serving. We're a uniting church faith community, and we're trying to make that our rhythm of living. Hearing one another's stories is a lot about listening and learning, and Noel Stoddart is our guest this evening for the next half hour or so as we just sort of hear what life is like for one another and what we can learn from one another's journeys. Noel, thanks for coming along.
Thank you. Yeah.
And thanks for having us at your place too. This is on your front deck.
Oh, pleasure.
It's a bit hard to see the view, but it's not bad, let me tell you. Well, Noel, give us the the potted history of Noel Stoddart in terms of you've had a life that's gone a lot of places, learned a lot of things, and how you came to faith.
Basically, I grew up in a Christian household, sort of Methodist before Uniting Church began, of course, and going in with that. So you would think that sort of led me directly into faith, but to be honest with you, I had a lot of questions. And for the faith for me to be real rather than just a mask to put on because that's what was expected, and things, it needed a few things. One, I didn't enjoy, particularly through my adolescence, my family experience and my church experience. For me, they were a place of torment and bullying for a lot of it, and it kind of didn't match with the gospel message that was there, except for a few people. And it was those people who were vulnerable enough and invitational enough to sit down and find out who I am, rather than, how come you're not exactly like your older brothers? How come you're not, you're a cookie cutter? How come it doesn't fit? How come you don't fit the standard image, And they just wanted to find out who I was, and actually create a real basis for a relationship. And it's actually in only those people that I saw Christ. And I'm kind of using language that I never knew back then. I just knew that their Christ, that's the one I want to know. The other things around, I just found them, to be honest with you, I actually found it more bullying. I didn't want to be bullied into a faith.
Yeah, I heard two things in that I'd like to pick up on a little bit. One was enjoy. How important is that a life of faith be something that we actually enjoy? Or that enjoys, that brings us joy, that injects joy?
Well, I guess I don't know if it's a unique understanding or my way of interpreting what joy means, because if it's just about happiness, just a emotional feeling, I don't find that.
Okay.
If I'm honest, I struggle with depression and a lot to do with my adolescence, and anxiety that comes with that, which, it's not easy, Phil, and and I don't find some of those things that you find in the Gospel of James that everything is joy, all the torment and things. No, Phil, a lot of times I don't feel happy.
Okay.
But then why then didn't he use the word happy? Why this joy? What's joy? And every time joy for me is described within that New Testament, I think it's more better to be translated as life.
So, like when Jesus says, "I've come that you might have life in all its fullness," like a complete thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the other thing that I thought I heard you were saying was faith as I saw it then, and life in the Christian church as I saw it then, isn't how I see it now. But I somehow got a sense of a thing that hasn't arrived yet. that your view of this life experience is constantly developing, and if I was to come back and ask you in 10 years' time, that might have changed again.
Yeah.
Am I right?
I think you're right. As to how it plays out, I think, and particularly the whole COVID thing is kind of forcing that. Well, what's the recipe? What's the recipe to success? Whereas go back to when I was an adolescent, it was the 4 hymn sandwich, and the break apart into youth group and so forth, and that was apparently the Sunday school, 4 hymn sandwich, youth groups. We had Christian Endeavour and so forth, and this was the recipe to success.
And it looked the same whether you were in the Methodist box,
Yep.
the Presbyterian box, the Anglican box, or the Baptist box.
Yep.
It might be Boys Brigade in one, Christian Endeavour in another, and
Yep.
OKs in another, but really that's how it looked.
And it proved that it doesn't have to be, and sometimes it definitely isn't a recipe for a success. And so in the 80s, of course, when the more Pentecostal sort of influx within Australian churches, we have a different recipe of success.
Mm-hmm.
That we play different songs, we play them differently, and on the third time through, the Spirit will move. So there was a whole different way of doing, and then that sort of, no, hang on, that doesn't work, and then suddenly, or probably even worse, something happened in a church service that, it was really meaningful, and certainly perhaps the Spirit certainly did move and touch a lot of people. And then, of course, people go, well, we have to redo it exactly the same in the next following months and pass it on to other churches for them to do it. So it's kind of like, well, we're going to control the movement of the Spirit, And I think what I struggle with is that it's not about what we do in the sense, it's about what the Spirit does and allowing the Spirit to do, and to do that is to be that vulnerable and open.
Okay.
So that's, and when I talk to people and relate to people when they're vulnerable and they're open, and wow, I see Christ in that, because that's how I see Christ.
He was a really invitational, is a very invitational.
Yeah.
If you're just joining us, if you've just jumped into the stream here, my name's Phil Smith. Guest this evening is Noel Stoddart, and this time on a Thursday evening we do a little thing called What's Your Story, and it's an opportunity just to hear stories of faith from real and ordinary people. Now, actually, I should ask you this beforehand, Noel. Are you a bank robber who came to Jesus while you were in jail? Have you smuggled Bibles behind the Iron Curtain? Did you ever jump out of an aeroplane, parachute failed to open, angels came around and brought you safely to the ground?
Nothing so exciting, Phil.
Good, because I'm not sure that they're the stories we actually want here on a Thursday evening, but a lot of people seem to say that that's, my story's not very interesting, Phil, because I wasn't, a biker who was converted in jail or jumped out of the aeroplane and so on and so on. And yet that's, to me, an example of how we've kind of come to, I don't know, we want life to be more thrilling, more exciting. I need to ride a Harley, or I need to, whatever. And so life of faith starts to want to look the same as well. I need it to be spectacular.
Yeah, well,
it's got to get my adrenaline going.
What I found quite interesting, just in the modern age, particularly in the last 10 years, you can tell by looking at me, Phil, that I don't win many beauty contests. And in fact, often when I get the second prize beauty contest card playing Monopoly, it's quite a giggle, But it's one of those sort of things that if you've got something to say within a lot of modern churches and even in the modern society, you've got to look good.
Yeah, the celebrity thing.
And you've got to have a six pack, and you've got to. I got more than one.
You and I have shared a six pack once or twice.
But the thing is, it's sort of like, you've got nothing to say unless you have the body to match it, And it's a shame that it's gone down that road. I don't want to go down the road of, if I want to teach and teach theology particularly, and teach about the gospel and the love of God, then I need to have the torn jeans and the faded T-shirt that cost me $100.
I still haven't worked out why torn jeans cost more when it used to be that Mum said you can't wear them anymore.
Yep.
Okay, the body to go with it, but also I want to ask about the brains to go with it, because you're somebody who you've really been very well educated. I mean, you tell us the story, but you've been trained in education as a teacher, you've been through theological college and so on. What was that sort of sense of formation for you as learning about the good news of Jesus Christ as a well understood thing?
Well, I've got to be honest, I mean, a lot of it's based on the fact of my seeing the gospel presented in ways I'm thinking I don't see Christ like that, and rather than just not agreeing with it, to actually find, well, I need to find out why, why is it that that's not sitting comfortably with me, and to get more of a provable sort of understanding of this open, vulnerable, relational God, that I really find the gospel and grace a part of. That it's not down to legalism, it's not down to a God that bullies us into submission, it's not down to, well, we need to follow a set, a plan that works kind of thing and so forth, but actually it's about, no matter what we're doing, is our Christ-likeness,
Okay, so how have you experienced conversion? And I imagine the answer is in part not a single light bulb moment, but a growing along your journey.
Yeah, look, yes, growing up, there were times with tent meetings and special services and
youth camps
where the guilt was piled on, but there's also that feeling for me, do I want to follow a God who just wants to make me, who I have to be guilty enough to convert, and it's about, well, I'm so guilty, rather what tricked for me was that understanding that God loves me. I know that sounds simple.
No, but yeah.
Wrapped in that is that God wants a relationship with me, not my version of something else. God wants a relationship with me where I'm at. God wants to, and is open to that, and I bring all of my baggage with me. And there is a vulnerability in God that allows me at times to beat on his chest and just say, yeah, why did you do this, and why this, and so forth, and takes that, and takes my faults and gently leads me on, into that loving relationship. I think less of the guilt and more of the love, for me, was the whole point of that conversion. For me, I started getting words to it and getting sort of solidity to it at university days.
Okay.
And I was at a residential college at University of Queensland, and there was a good Christian group there. And there was a couple of them who was just so beautiful and vulnerable and gentle, that got to see a different understanding of Christ than what I grew up with,
I want to return to that idea, so I'll try to keep it in mind, that necessity or the beauty of a community in which you can be yourself and the experience of that. But if I asked, if the original question I said was, why did you initially, choose the Christian way? Next question is, why are you still on the Christian way? Why are you still hanging out with Jesus?
Yeah. There's a logic to it, I think. I really do. And that's, for me, having that relational understanding of God, allowing me freedom of choice, You can't make a friend, Phil. I know we're constantly telling kids, go and make friends.
Go and make a friend, yes.
But you can't make one.
No.
You can only invite someone to that relationship, you know. So that's what I see God doing. Not making disciples. And that's an interesting thing that we have. Go and make disciples.
Yep.
Our English connotation of make is, well, you're going to force it, you know.
Yeah, we take some pieces, we put them together. Again, there's a pattern, there's a recipe. Yeah.
Whereas relationships grow. And I think when we look at our relationship with God, and we see it more like fruit, you can't make an apple, you can only plant a tree. And you can water it, you can nurture it, you can care it, but the apple's only going to come as fruit of that, you know.
And in the season, and that's not something you can do much about.
You know, whereas I think fear drives a lot of churches to try and make disciples, you know, stamp them out, you know, rather than growing, you know, inviting in, being that vulnerable sort of community and inviting others in and letting the Spirit work and letting them grow into that. Because we can't force anyone into the faith. Because is that a real relationship? Can you force anyone into a relationship, you know, that is real and is mature and growing?
So in that, you know, you made a comment there, this is something that churches can be afraid of. Well, yeah, what is it that creates fear? What are we afraid of? Particularly in this, you know, like where we are now, 21st century, suburban Australia. What are we afraid of?
You know, if we look at, I'm sort of going with the Uniting Church, you know, the first half of the Uniting Church existence was so powerful. You know, there was a lack of fear, there was a heightened optimism, there was a real sense of love and reaching out to other denominations and supporting and being part of. I found the second half of our existence within Australia is been one of fear. And a lot to do, well, you know, where people are leaving the Uniting Church and going somewhere else or to another church. You know, rather than saying, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful that they are carrying on in their faith? You know, we said, well, we don't want that. And so we stopped being more ecumenical and we started being so insular and worried about and fearful of our own identity and will we lose ourselves? Will we lose what is the Uniting Church? And rather than saying, well, let's just go with where we're at and just keep doing...
Put the U back into uniting,
and just doing what Jesus has asked us to do, rather than being, we just want to protect what we've got.
I was listening, I was paying attention, but I was also drawn to Noel and Sally's garden, which just struck me in what you were saying there. It's one big garden. And yours is not one it's got this bit here and that bit there and there are flowers there and veg. No, it's this fabulous thing, and in that I get some idea of what it is to be in that kingdom of God thing, in that bigger church, instead of this is my patch and I want everything in my patch. It's just not possible. But a thing that cross-pollinates and produces, and it's got a bit of this and a bit of that there, and as you get around it and explore it, you'll find what's bearing fruit. I'm back to your apple. Yeah, I think there's a whole lot in that. Can I come back to that university thing you spoke about?
Yep.
And you mentioned the joy of being in a community. And this is something that you know, wherever you might be watching, I hope it sort of rings a bit of a bell with you, but something that we're trying to focus on in our faith community. What it is to be people who know and are known by one another and by others who are drawn into the community. Why is that so important to developing a mature faith, that you do this with others?
Yeah, I think it's not only just for your own growth and that sense of belonging, you know. It is missional in itself. There were, within our residential colleges, there were a number of students with faith, and I think we could probably put them into three different kind of categories. There were those who had a secret faith. You know, I'm just going to keep that to myself. I might go off to a chapel service here or there, or go when I go home, or go to something, you know. But that's it. You know, you wouldn't know. You know. Then you had those who, well, we're going to separate ourselves. This is a Christian group within there, and they do their Christian group things, and don't mix.
So if you like playing chess and you know the rules, you join the chess club.
Yeah.
If you like playing volleyball and you know those rules, you join the volleyball club.
Yeah.
And if you know the rules about being a Christian, you can join the Christian club.
And look, it was safe.
Okay.
It was safe. They had a group that they could belong to. It was safe. There was security in that. You know, we are what we are. And there was a lack of vulnerability, you know. And then there was the third group, and this is the group that I was challenged by and I loved. And the rest of the student population were challenged and felt loved. You know, this was the group who we would go to a student function knowing that there'd be copious amounts of alcohol drunk. There would be all sorts of things going on. And it's not because we agree with it, but because that's where Jesus would go. You know, to the you know, the same reasons the Pharisees didn't like what Jesus was doing, you know. And it was not to join in with the drunkenness and so forth. But yeah, we will go, we will talk with them, and then where things really mattered, was we'd look after them, you know. And I still remember a couple of the students coming up, and of course being, when students get a little bit under the weather, they become open and vulnerable, and will just say what's on their mind, you know, and just saying, you know what, I love you guys, because I know I'm going to get home safe. I know that you guys love me, and I love you for that, you know. And that sort of, they actually see somehow Christ in that sort of situation. That sort of like, yeah, they later on, that's what they draw on, and they see that. And I know some that have come to faith, and they recognise that that's where they really saw Christ in action, of someone who would be vulnerable enough, would go out and serve.
Okay. I've been engaging a bit with a mob called the Underground Church in Tampa, in Florida. And the story that their pioneers tell is that they lived in those communities when they were at college. That's exactly what you're describing. And then they went and joined the real church. They finished at uni, they got real jobs, got real lives, you know, and went to real churches, and found that if you were lucky, if you could play the guitar, there was something for you to do. Or if you're in a mega church, you could help with the car parking. You could do that. And they were just so frustrated with this idea of church compared to what they had known as Jesus people who engaged others and invited them to get to know Jesus. How can we have churches that look more like that? And what's been your life experience in the last couple of years? Because I don't put words in your mouth, but I sense you've really walked a long way away from sitting in pews looking at the back of somebody's head every Sunday morning.
Well, you can't these days anyway. But
well, that's true, yes. If you're watching this in years to come, it's the COVID pandemic.
Look, we'll still enjoy going to a solid pew seating sort of church. We still can get something out of that. I think what has been, that I kind of always knew, but it's become more and more abundantly clear, no one has a life where they don't need Jesus. You know? And as much as people will try and put on a mask of invulnerability, you know, everybody needs it. Everybody's had hurts. Everybody's had, it needs that trust of a relationship of someone who cares, you know, and will love them regardless of, you know. And look, sometimes it's tough. And there's, look, I'm not going to beat around the bush. There are times, look, even within my own family, where I've just had to say, okay, that I can't do this anymore. You know, there's been vulnerability for years. You know, until the point where their decision is no. I don't want that. I'd rather go back to what that abusive relationship we used to have. You know, and so I've had to walk away from that, but allow them to have their choice. You know, yeah, and it's difficult, and I still hope and pray that that'll change in the future. You know, and yeah.
No, we're probably drawing close to time in terms of what we've set aside for this. But I wonder what have been the moments of greatest joy for you in a life of faith in the last couple of years. What have been those times where you go, thank you, God, thank you so much.
Look, the obvious secure answer, of course, is family and my wife and kids and so forth. You know, and having their responses and a deeper relationship due to being more and more vulnerable with each other. You know, that's been a great joy for me. You know, outside of that, secure answer, for me, it's been when students have responded, into that. I want to know more about your God. There's something different there. I want to know more of that. And having them listen and talk and allowing them to ask questions and discover, and allowing the Spirit to move within them. To see beautiful growth and beautiful come to relationship stuff. You can't help not get a thrill by that. Yeah. There's always the temptation of arrogance and going, look what I've done. But it's not.
Notches in the belt,
Yeah, but it's not. I've not. No. And that's the secret for me, is the more I've kept trying to force that, particularly with adolescents, in students that I teach, the less likely that it's going to happen, the more that there's that vulnerability, and I've had students abuse me and carrying on and, and it's a tough gig. Teachers out there, the toughest gig is to teach religion. But to teach it well, to teach it in a vulnerable state, not sort of, well, here's the rules, bend, genuflect, make sure you do this, do that, follow this, and that's an easy gig, but teach with that vulnerability of allowing them to question, to argue, and that's okay. In fact, that's brilliant, that's wonderful that when that happens. And you do get students who would stay behind and burst into tears. I still remember one student who, at a school, who began our class one year as sort of like, I'm going to sit at the back of the classroom. I'm not going to listen to what you got to say. I've got work to do. Get on with what you got to do and leave me alone. And he was shocked, first of all, that I said, okay. But occasionally, if something triggers your interest, you're always welcome to join in and listen, or just sit and listen, or whatever you'd like to do, and just slowly watch this guy suddenly put his stuff away and join in. As we start talking about life, and as we start talking about trying to understand how we understand life, and the nature of God and so forth, and it's like, hang on, this is not what I'm expecting. There's something in this. To one day staying behind and saying, do you think God could love me? I said, mate, I know he does. He says, but sir, you don't understand. I think I'm gay. I said, and the shock on his face, and I looked at him and said, so what? That doesn't stop God loving you. He says, but I've been told, like in my primary years, that I'm going to hell because if I decide to be gay. I said, not that I'm aware of. That's not a prerequisite. God loves you, man, and wants to invite you into a relationship. And for that guy, just like, wow, that's the key. That's the.
I cannot stop God loving me.
Yeah, So I just, those sort of times give me thrills, you know, and watching people sort of grow and advance in that, you know, and so forth. Yeah.
At the risk of something incredibly trivial, one of the things that I admire about Noel is the way he engages with people around him. He's got a great personality for that, admittedly. But
Well,
could you
just because I don't have the looks, Phil.
Okay. Can you tell us about the catapult, the Easter eggs, and the people who live across the street?
Oh, look, that was COVID time. You know, can't do things with neighbours. You know, it was very much the shutdown.
Yep.
You know, so how can we, a new family in the neighbourhood, how could we make them feel welcome on an Easter morning? You know, when we couldn't go down and just even hand them things. You know, so because Easter was at the end of the school holidays, you know, I had a chat with my girls and say, what can we do? You know, and of course, chocolate always is on, particularly my youngest daughter. Chocolate's always on her mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know. I said, all right, but we can't go and give it to them. You know what we can do? And I guess we could throw it at them. You know, I said, well, why don't we make something that will throw it over? You know, so of course catapults come to mind, and the girls research.
Of course they do. Yes,
know,
they just do.
And the girls researched the catapult, and we spent the holidays building it and testing it, and we went and bought ourselves, you know, sort of 12 eggs or 2 dozen eggs or whatever it was, you know. And we set it up. We knew how far we could, which, by the way, wasn't a great distance. We're not talking about storming a castle here.
Oh, okay.
It just had to go over the fence.
But, I don't know if you got those solid, although you could kill somebody.
Oh, yeah.
What were those ones that were made out of marzipan or something? And they'd break teeth.
Well, the candy eggs.
Yeah. I reckon one of them. And you could get them even filled with, Smarties. That would weigh something.
Oh, yeah, shot, yeah.
Try that next year.
Oh, we'll do that, yeah.
All right. Noel, thank you.
Oh, pleasure.
I don't know if we're supposed to do that, but we could do that instead because we'll hand sanitise, I promise. Thanks for being with us. And if you're somebody who would like to share your story, please just get in touch. We get together online and face-to-face on Sunday evenings. Online's at the 5:30 mark, and you've obviously found the Facebook stream for that. If you wanted to know more about Bells as a faith community, Bells Caloundra. You'll find us on YouTube. You'll find us on Facebook. Every blessing. Enjoy the rest of your week, and especially you, mate.
Thanks, Phil. Appreciate it. Blessings.